As days turned into weeks, the unease in Nyakalowa thickened like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. It seeped into the very bones of the village, lingering in the spaces between words, in the way hands clutched at garments, in the silence that stretched where laughter once lived. Mothers clutched their children tighter, their arms wrapped around small bodies as though shielding them from an unseen force. Elders gathered in whispered conversation, their voices hushed, their glances sharp and wary. Neighbors who once shared meals, stories, and burdens now walked past each other with hurried steps, their eyes cast downward. The once warm community had become a place of cold stares and whispered fears. Naya tried to carry on as if all were normal. She would cradle Akanisha in her arms, singing lullabies passed down through generations. Soft, soothing melodies meant to comfort a child, to lull her into the safety of sleep. But when visitors came, when family, friends, or neighbors stepped into their home, something unspoken settled in the air. Their eyes never met the child's. Their hands, which once reached to touch the soft cheeks of newborns with delight, now remained at their sides, clenched in unease. Their words, once warm, became hurried. Conversations cut short, visits brief, and when they left, they never turned their backs, as if to do so would invite something unseen to follow them home. Kojo felt the weight of it, the judgment, the silent exile. The men he had once stood beside in the fields, the same men who had laughed with him, who had shared in his victories and defeats, now kept their distance. The fields where he toiled under the sun felt lonelier. The days stretched longer. The village was still his home, but it no longer felt like home. Then, as the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the village was called to gather. The central fire burned bright, its flickering light casting long shadows across the faces of the assembled villagers. The elders stood before them, their presence commanding, their voices carrying the weight of tradition, of law, of unshaken authority. Elder Badu, his face etched with the lines of countless seasons, stepped forward. His voice, though calm, was heavy. "We have lived in harmony with the forest and its spirits," he began, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. "We have honored the old ways, and in return, we have been blessed." A murmur of agreement rippled through the villagers, their nods slow, their eyes darting between one another. But now, Elder Badu's voice dropped, the words carrying a different weight. "A disturbance has entered our midst." The fire crackled, but no one spoke. Then Elder Sisi, her frame small but her voice firm, stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly, her lips pressing into a thin line before she spoke. The child. Her voice was just above a whisper, yet it carried through the still night. Akanisha. A name spoken, yet heavy with meaning. She is not like us. A hush fell over the crowd. Her eyes. Elder Sisi's hands clenched before her chest, her breath shallow. They seen to the soul. A shudder passed through those who had dared to meet those unnatural blue eyes. They freeze time itself. A silence followed, deep, expectant, filled with unspoken fears, and in that silence the village held its breath. Nia stood at the edge of the gathering, her arms wrapped tightly around Akanisha, swaddled against her chest. The heat of the fire flickered against her skin, but it was the cold words of her people that burned the most. She felt it rising within her, a surge of anger, a mother's fury. "She is just a baby." Her voice cut through the murmurs, raw and trembling. "Our baby." For a moment there was silence. The villagers hesitated, their eyes flickering toward her, toward the child in her arms. Elder Badu's gaze softened, if only slightly, but his voice did not waver. "Nia, we understand your love." The words were meant to soothe, but they did not. But the signs, the lions, the lightning, the silence of the forest. He took a step forward, his old bones creaking, the weight of his years pressing against him. "These are omens." The fire crackled. Shadows flickered. "We must consider the safety of all." Then, a voice from the crowd, sharp, frantic. I looked into her eyes. A man stepped forward, his face pale, his breath uneven. I couldn't move for what felt like hours. Another voice higher, filled with anguish. "My son hasn't spoken since he saw her." A woman, clutching her arms as if cold despite the heat of the fire. "He just stares into the distance." The murmurs grew louder, whispers turning to voices, voices turning to cries. Fear had taken root. It spread, thick as smoke, winding its way into every heart, every mind. Kojo stepped forward, his shoulders squared, his eyes steady, but beneath it, beneath the calm, there was something else. Desperation. "We are her parents." His voice was strong. "We will ensure she harms no one." A pause. "Give us time." Elder Cece sighed. Her hands, wrinkled with age, twisted together before her. "Time may be what we do not have." Her words were not loud, but they were heard. "The forest is restless." A murmur of agreement. "The animals behave strangely." Another nod, another whisper. "We must act." And with those words, the decision was made. That night, Akanisha would be watched. Her interactions would be limited. The village would protect itself, even if it meant isolating one of its own. Akanisha was only 3 years old when she first began to sense it. The difference. The invisible space between herself and the others. The village children played freely, their laughter ringing through the air like birdsong. Their bare feet kicked up dust as they ran, chasing one another in endless games of joy and mischief. But never, never did they invite her to play. She sat alone, small hands resting on her knees, watching. From the steps of her family's hut, she observed them, her blue eyes wide, her heart quiet, yet filled with something she did not yet understand. Longing. Behind her, Naya stood in the doorway. She did not speak. She did not call Akanisha inside. She only watched as her daughter sat in silence, gazing at the other children, yearning for something that would never come. And then, one day, Tano, a little boy no older than 4, ran too close. He had been laughing, his small legs carrying him forward in reckless joy, when suddenly he stopped, abruptly, as if his body had forgotten how to move. His wide brown eyes locked onto Akanisha's, and Akanisha turned her head. Her strange blue eyes met his. The world went still. Tano did not blink, did not move, did not breathe. Akanisha, still too young to understand, tilted her head. Her small fingers uncurled from her lap, reaching out. She only wanted to touch him, to feel the warmth of another child's hand. But before her fingers could graze his skin, a scream. "No, don't touch him!" The sound shattered the silence. A woman, Tano's mother, came sprinting toward them. Her feet barely touched the ground. Her breath came in ragged gasps. And then she grabbed him, dragged him away, clutching him as if he were made of stone. The villagers whispered. Soft, urgent murmurs carried by the wind, slipping through doorways, weaving through the market stalls, lingering in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. They whispered of what had happened that day, of the boy who had looked into her eyes, of the boy who had not moved, not spoken, not blinked. Tano remained unresponsive for 3 days. He sat inside his family's hut, cross-legged on the woven mat where he had always played. His small hands rested limply in his lap. His eyes, once filled with the light of childhood, were unfocused, empty. His mouth slightly parted, as if a word had been forming on his lips when time had abandoned him. But he did not speak. He did not cry. He did not react to the voices calling his name. And when at last, on the 3rd day, the weight of silence broke, and he returned, gasping as if waking from a dream, he refused to speak of what he had seen. He would not say what had happened in that frozen moment, what had held him there, what he had glimpsed within Akanisha's eyes. And so the fear deepened. It settled in the bones of the villagers, creeping into their blood, their breath, their very way of life. It grew, slowly, quietly, steadily, like roots burrowing into the earth. By the time Akanisha was 5 years old, no one dared to look at her, not the women in the marketplace, whose hands trembled as they wrapped food in cloth and left it outside her family's hut, too afraid to step inside. Not the children who once ran freely through the fields, now careful never to stray too close. Not the elders who sat in their sacred circle, muttering prayers when she passed. Not even her own parents. Kojo, the man who had once cradled her in strong arms, now kept his gaze fixed on the ground when he spoke. Nia, the mother who had once sung lullabies to her in the dark, now turned away when Akanisha reached for her hand. The only eyes that ever met hers were her own, reflected in still water. She was different. It was not just in her eyes. It was in the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she watched the world as if she understood far more than any child should. She appeared far more intelligent than her years. She did not ask questions like the other children. She did not stumble over simple things. She did not seek guidance in the way a child should. She knew things. Things she should not have known. And she never got into trouble with her parents, not in the way other children did. When she did, when there was conflict, it was not because she had misbehaved. It was because her parents did not understand her, did not foresee her actions, did not believe, could not believe, the depth of her personality. The first time Nia had tried to discipline her, Akanisha had merely looked at her mother, a silent stare, those unnatural blue eyes, piercing, cutting through the layers of her mother's being, sinking into the deepest part of her soul. And then Nia lost time. She did not remember what happened between the moment she met her daughter's gaze and the moment she found herself kneeling on the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. She gasped, her hands trembling against the woven mat beneath her. It had only been seconds, or had it been minutes? She could not say. She could not recall the space in between, the gap where time had slipped through her fingers. Only the aftermath remained, the weight of something unseen pressing upon her chest. After that, Nia never looked her daughter in the eyes again, not once, not even when Akanisha spoke, not even when she reached for her. Kojo fared no better. He loved his daughter, fiercely, but he feared her even more. He saw it. The way she wandered through the village, her small feet never quite disturbing the earth beneath her. The way the other children, so full of life, so full of energy, never touched her, never called her name, never acknowledged her existence. The way the elders watched her from a distance, their lips moving in whispered prayers, their eyes filled with quiet dread, and the way the animals followed her. At night, Kojo would wake in the darkness, feeling a presence beyond the walls of their hut. He would step outside, his breath caught in his throat, and he would see them. Owls, perched upon the thatched roof, their wide, unblinking eyes staring into the night. Wolves, standing at the edge of the village, their glowing eyes fixed upon their home, still, silent, watching. It was as if nature itself had acknowledged something within his child, and Kojo, despite his love, could not deny the truth. Akanisha was not like them.